Hey guys, I'm Joseph Evans, author of the Secret Sequence books, The Phoenix Prophecy, The Ember Effect, Soulbound and The Secret of Rain on episode. Today I'm going to be giving you guys my top 5 tips for writing an awesome episode story. At 5, make choices that appear to be meaningful. Let's give you an example. In The Phoenix Prophecy, I give readers the choice to either detain or release a prisoner. That's a huge choice, right? Something that would affect the story in a big way. In the reader's eyes, yes, but actually the outcome of both decisions leads to the exact same point in the next scene. If you release the prisoner, she attacks you, and if you detain the prisoner, she burrows through a whole inner cell and attacks you. This type of choice benefits both you and your readers. Readers will think that they have made an important decision which will be very satisfying for them, and you will be able to tell the story that you want to tell without having to get too complicated. At 4, animate every line of dialogue. When I first began writing The Phoenix Prophecy, which was my debut episode story, the thought of animating every single line of dialogue was a daunting and exhausting one. So I skipped half the lines and animated every alternate line, which I hoped would be enough. When the first few chapters were released to the public, I asked readers on the episode forums what they thought of it. Thankfully, they loved it. But one criticism I did receive was that often my characters' mouths weren't moving when they were saying something. Since then, I've animated every single line of dialogue in my stories, and that criticism has disappeared. So it's definitely worth it if you want your story to look and feel professional and ooze quality. Thankfully, Episode has now implemented a feature that will allow you to apply random talking animations to dialogue, saving you hours and hours of painstaking typing. But when I say random talking animations, I mean random token animations. For example, you might have a character saying something upbeat and positive, but the animate button will apply the talk sad animation to it, which will confuse your readers. So here's my advice for using that animate tool. I would go through your script and add in any specific animations you want, then use the animate button on anything left over. Then when you're testing your story, see if any of the randomly generated animations look jarring or out of place, and just adjust those manually. Okay, now that I've mentioned testing, I can segue smoothly into tip number 3, which is test your story meticulously. I cannot express the importance of this one enough. I've read quite a few episode stories that have been well written, but they haven't been tested properly, and I'm sure you have too. There'll be characters popping in and out of scenes, cameras focused on incorrect zones, and characters facing away from each other when they should be facing towards each other. I'm sure you'll agree that as a reader it's a little bit annoying, and it just gives a story a general sloppiness that could be avoided with some testing. So the best thing to do is just test. And I don't mean just playing through it once, I mean playing through it multiple times so you've tested every choice that a player can make. This will mean that you will have seen every possible path and every possible dialogue branch that a reader could potentially see, and you will know with confidence then that everybody is going to get a polished quality chapter from start to finish. If you're doing more advanced branching with a point system and things like that, testing becomes even more paramount, and believe me, I know from experience. In a particular chapter of The Phoenix Prophecy, Phoenix goes searching for firewood, and I made a point system in which the story would progress forward once Phoenix had gathered enough firewood. The problem is that I had a stinking cold and a headache the day I was testing that particular chapter, and I rushed through the testing phase, which caused me to miss a particular line of code, which was that I had forgotten to reset Phoenix's character points to 0 before the minigame. What this meant was that readers became stuck in an infinite loop that they couldn't escape from, and I had to get the episode team to reset players' progress to the beginning of the chapter. It was a nightmare for readers, for the episode team, and a nightmare for me. So if you are going to be doing anything advanced like that, then testing is even more important than ever. At number 2, use cliffhangers at the end of each episode. The best way to keep a reader hooked on reading your story chapter after chapter is to have something exciting or intriguing happening at the end of the chapter and not resolving it until the following chapter. This will make them anxious to find out what happens and will encourage them to spend their passes on your story. Here's an example. Let's say at some point in your story you want a character to be knocked unconscious by a villain. It would be easy enough to slap that into the middle of a chapter, but to drive that audience retention, what you want to do is have that happen at the end of a chapter and not have them wake up until the beginning of the following chapter. This will leave readers wondering if this character that they've become so attached to is okay, and they will be anxious to spend passes on your story to find out in the next chapter. Another way to use cliffhangers in your story is to have a chapter build up to an exciting event and have the chapter end just before the event begins. For example, in the Ember Effect, Ember is just about to meet Lady Astaria when the chapter ends, and in Soulbound, Sky is just about to enter the soul binding ceremony when the chapter ends. Both of these things make the reader desperate to read the next chapter because you've already built up the anticipation in previous chapters. And finally, my number 1 tip for writing an awesome episode story is to plan your entire story in detail beforehand. I know this one is annoying. The first thing you're going to want to do as soon as you come up with a great idea is get into that episode portal and start writing. But as somebody who has fallen into that trap time and time again, I can assure you that you will have a way more enjoyable experience writing if you plan everything up front. On top of this, your story will be the best it can be, the most coherent it can be, and you will never ever get writer's block because you'll know exactly where your story is going. The way I plan a story is I will get a blank notebook and I will start jotting down ideas. Usually I start jotting down the twists first. So I will say, for example, something like this. The main character finds out that she is the mother of the villain who has time travelled back from the future. Then I'll build a world around these twists using a mix of brainstorming and just random ideas that pop into my head. And don't be afraid of crossing things out, it should be messy at this stage. If it's messy at this stage, it's not going to be messy later on. Once you have twists, a world and characters, you can start refining the plot so that you come up with a solid 3-act structure. And when that's in place, you can start refining even further into a chapter by chapter breakdown so you know exactly what's happening in every single chapter. Trust me guys, if you do this, it will transform your writing into something that is confident, satisfying and affecting, and you will never look back. Alright guys, that is it. I hope these tips have been helpful. If they have helped you at all, please do subscribe to my channel, it would really help me out. If you do have any questions about these tips at all, please do leave a comment in the comment section down below and I will try and answer you as soon as I can. Also, do you guys have any tips that you would like to share with others? Is there anything in particular that really works for you when you're writing an episode script? If you do have anything to share, please do comment them down below as well, I would love to hear them. Alright, thanks so much for watching folks, and I will see you in the next video.